I'm Thomas Randolph. I'm in Trenton, Georgia in the United States. Today is September, I think it's the 28th, 2022. And this video is about how I chose to become a teacher. My early education was not a great success. In first grade, I couldn't read. I was such a bad reader. There was 3 of us that had to sit in the back of the room with our teacher. And we were so bad at reading, she finally gave up, and we just spent our time looking up page numbers. So she'd say, page 35, and we'd turn to that. And there was a thing called SRA, Scholastic Reading Association, and they had the little paragraphs, and they were all color-coded. And everybody figured this out. If the brighter the color, the smarter you were, and the darker the color, well, you can figure out what that was. I was way down in the brown and the black, so I figured not good. So I was never a great student through school, a C student at the best. I didn't read my first book until I was in 7th grade. Okay. I joined the Marine Corps in 1970 and then was assigned to a ship, the USS Providence, light guided missile cruiser. In 1972, in April, the President of the United States ordered every naval ship with a gun to go to Vietnam within 48 hours notice. The North had invaded the South for the last time in Vietnam, and it was just a rush to stem the invasion. Okay, so we were doing coastal bombardment from the demilitarized zone, that's kind of divided Vietnam in half, up to Haiphong Harbor, way up north. And we would do coastal bombardment day and night, shooting back and forth. We had 3 6-inch guns, 2 5-inch guns. I was a mount captain in a 5-inch twin-barrel gun. And one day, I don't remember the month of it was, we were floating dead in the water off the coast of Vietnam. We were outside of territorial water, beyond 3 miles. I don't know, maybe 5 or 6. We could clearly see Vietnam. And I was standing at the front of my ship. I'm going to see if you can see this picture well enough. Okay, there's my ship. And I was standing right in the front of the ship on the right-hand side by the bow on the starboard side, right about there. There was nobody else around. There's the 5-inch gun that I was in charge of. So I was standing right there. I was leaning over the railing, and all of a sudden, I just knew God wanted me to get out of the Marine Corps and become a teacher. Now, I was scheduled to get out of the Marine Corps in January of that year. And just like that, I knew that's what God wanted me to do. Now, I don't think I can recall any incident in my life where pretty much out of the blue, I just knew that's what God wanted me to do. So I decided I'll get out of the Marine Corps. I'll go to university. I decided I wanted to get a double major in English and French because my initial thought was to be a missionary in North Africa where they spoke French. In the Marine Corps, I don't know, once a year or twice a year, you had to be evaluated, just like business or being a teacher. And they were called fitness reports. And there were 5 different categories. I don't know, cooperative, you're proficient, helpful, whatever those things were. And one day, my commanding officer, who was a really great guy, called me in, and he read through the fitness report. And when he finished, I said, well, thank you very much, sir. And I went back to my sleeping quarters. Now, the Marine detachment was at the front of the ship where those guns were, and our sleeping quarters were way in the back of the ship. So that ship, I don't know, was like a football and a half long, football field. And immediately after he gave me that evaluation, he walked back the entire length of the ship back to our sleeping quarters to find me. And I had never seen him I can recall, in our sleeping area. And he came up to me and he said, I need to talk to you. I said, yes, sir. And he said, I don't think you realize what I've done for you. I said, no, sir. He said, well, in my entire career of being in the Marine Corps, I could count on one hand the number of people I've given a perfect score for all 5 categories, and you're one of them. Well, I said, thank you very much, sir. And he said, the Marine Corps needs you. You really need to stay in the Marine Corps. And I said, I can't do that, sir. God wants me to get out and become a teacher. And it turned out he was an elementary teacher before he went on full-time Marine Corps. He was an elementary teacher, really great guy. And he tried to persuade me. I said, no, I can't do that. I can't do that. I'm going to get out. Now, a little background. Like I said, I was never a great student all through high school. I lived in the shadow of my older sister, who was an avid reader. She was a semi-national merit scholarship finalist. This is a national competition that tests high school kids, the top in the nation. She was a semi-finalist, so she was straight A's. And I wasn't anything like that. Nothing like that whatsoever. So I lived in her shadow of that. And it wasn't until I became a Christian that I really became an excellent student. As soon as I became a Christian, while in the Marine Corps, right after boot camp, I was consumed with wanting to read the Bible. I just couldn't put it down. And this is like nothing I made myself do. I just couldn't stop. So I was in electronics school. That's what they assigned me to. And I knew from day one, this isn't going to work. I am the most unmathematical person you could imagine. Back then, they were teaching us to use the slide rule, if you even know what that is. So I knew I was going to flunk out. And each week, at the end of the week, they gave you a test. And if you flunked it, you had to go to the first sergeant and explain to him why you flunked his test. So I remember one week we were standing in the hall right outside his office, and I could hear him yelling and chewing out the privates in front of me. And then finally it was my turn to go in. I'm standing at attention, and he looks at me and said, "Private, why'd you flunk this test?" And then in my ignorance, I said, "Sir, I don't like your school, and I don't want to be here." Which he immediately exploded and sent an avalanche of curses on me. He just couldn't believe any stupid private would tell him that. And he said, "Listen, private, if you don't pass this school, I'm going to put you on mess duty for 3 years. You know, you'll be peeling potatoes, or I'm going to send you to Vietnam and get you killed." I thought, gosh, man, to die for my country in Vietnam because I wasn't good at math? That didn't sound too good. Well, bottom line, I definitely flunked out of that class, and they sent me what would eventually be sea duty. That's how I got onto that ship. Okay, in the next month, I was being discipled by a wonderful navigator representative that I owe so much of my Christian life, a guy named Larry Lee. And he would, I became a Christian over the 4th of July holiday in 1971. And he was responsible for working with Christians on my military base in San Diego, which was MCRD, Marine Corps Recruiting Depot, San Diego. And he prayed that at least one Marine would would become a Christian, and I was that Christian that weekend. And he started teaching me about the Bible. And I got involved with the Navigators. And during that time, eventually I was invited to teach little lessons during conferences and stuff like that, and lead some little Bible studies. And that's where I first had my experience in teaching. In time, I would come to recognize and believe that God gave me a gift of teaching. I have a passion for that. Absolutely love that. Spent 38 years in public education doing that. 23 years in undergraduate and graduate university students in the evenings, and as of now taught in 8 different countries overseas. So a tremendous passion for teaching. And it was those experiences in my early Christian life while being discipled that really gave me a taste for teaching. And that's what really would inspire me. I liked it, but I never had the intention of being a professional teacher. That didn't cross my mind. But it wasn't until I became a Christian I was consumed with reading the Bible, and that's really how I learned, how I taught myself to learn and become an excellent student was simply reading and studying the Bible, and all of that. And that's what I have continued to do. Now, I've been retired for just about 3 years now. And I substitute teach once a week just to get into the schools, just for the fun. I love schools, libraries, and churches, and airports. I'm inspired by it. So I substitute once a week. And I teach online. I'm teaching online to Pakistan, and I teach online to other countries, teaching business. I just got back from teaching business in Honduras. And in the spring, I'll go to Kenya in East Africa, and then Kyrgyzstan, which is Central Asia, just south of Russia. And I'll be teaching business lessons there. So I just continue to find teaching absolutely fascinating. And because I like being a teacher, I just love learning. I'm just consumed with that every day. I read my Bible, I do my prayer walk, and I get on YouTube, and generally I look at 2 new YouTubes about something I know nothing, absolutely nothing about, and just continue to learn. So that's my story about how I became a Christian and a Christian teacher. I spent 5 years in San Bernardino, Southern California, teaching at a high school. From there, friend, my wife and I moved to Chattanooga, and I taught at a junior high for I think 3 years, and then went to a high school in Chattanooga and taught there 17 years, and then finally moved to Dade County, Georgia, and taught in a middle school for another 17 years, taught 8th grade English and social studies, and then finally retired from there. But and I continue. Each Wednesday at church, I teach a group with 2 other men, teach 4th and 5th grade boys, and that's a lot of fun. We did homeschool our 3 children, Jason, Tyler, and Travis. We started teaching them at home while we were living in China. 1991, we lived in China for 2 years, and obviously there was no place for them to go to school, so they were homeschooled there. And then when we came back, we bought 30 acres of land in Dade County, Georgia, and that became their classroom. So that's my story on how I became a teacher. Thank you.